Hello, and welcome to AFSPA Live, our monthly digital broadcast designed to give AFSPA members and eligible federal employees a place to ask questions and get answers about past AFSPA Talks topics, their benefits, and wellness needs. You can ask your question through the chat box on whichever social media platform you're streaming AFSPA Live, YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. If you're not able to join us live, call our toll-free line prior to the broadcast at 888-435-0757 and leave our team a voice message that we may play back and answer live on air. Just tell us who you are and the question you'd like us to answer. I'll see you at the next AFSPA Live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to AFSPA Live, a live Q&A broadcast session that we hold the last Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Maddie Norton, and I'm excited to be moderating this show today. I'm a communication coordinator at AFSPA, and with me, per usual, is our CEO, Kyle Longton. And today we are discussing FSBP coverage for the LGBTQ plus community. And obviously it's June, so it is Pride Month. So happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
If you haven't already, we did a podcast a couple of weeks ago discussing, youth specifically in the LGBTQ space. And it was a great podcast. And we thought that we would continue the conversation a little bit into AFSPA Live today.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna refer people back to that same podcast you mentioned, because it's a great look at how families and family members and other allies can be supportive of youth who are questioning or identifying in new ways on gender identity or sexual attractive spectrums as we discuss it. And we had a great guest who has actually been treating a number of our members for years through our partnership with the Truman Group. So I encourage everybody to go back and either watch the video on YouTube or listen to the podcast.
Absolutely. And I'll start. We're going to use some terms today that may not be something that everyone may be aware of or know. So I'll ask a pretty easy question, Kyle. How does the Foreign Service Benefit Plan define gender affirming care?
Sure. So, we don't have a specific definition in our brochure of gender affirming care. And our use of this term in our brochure, and I have the brochure just for reference for some of the questions we might cover today. But essentially, what we're talking about when we're talking about gender affirming care, this is someone who was assigned a particular gender at birth and is now identifying differently, whether they're identifying as non-binary or transitioning from male to female, female to male. Wherever that transition may be happening, there are a number of services that we offer that can support that person, mental health being one of them, and a key portion of gender affirming care. We also do offer hormone therapy, and that is covered under our prescription benefit. And happy to talk a little bit more about that, though I encourage that is absolutely a discussion to be having with a medical provider, because it does require a prescription. And then we also do cover gender affirming surgery. And that term in particular, gender affirming surgery, is something that sort of has evolved over the years from gender reassignment surgery, transgender surgery, but gender affirming care really captures the full breadth of the services that we offer and reflects some of the changing standards really over the last decade.
Right. And, speaking of over the last decade of how terms have changed and, we're learning more about the community and, things for that. I know we talked a little bit about misconceptions that our guest on the podcast had heard and how to combat some of that. And, I even talked a little bit about how you may be thinking why is there such an influx of, people joining that community, the LGBTQ plus community, or how are they getting to it? Or, is it just a phase? Is it something like that? And I kind of talked with my team yesterday that it's really just people are having more access to things. They're being able to explore their identity. They're able to talk with others that feel the same way as them. And more people are also educating themselves on how to speak about it, how to ask questions respectfully and things like that. And that's really why we're here today talking about it on AFSPA Live, and why it's featured in as a part of the Foreign Service Benefit Plan, because we know we have members out there and we want to be able to support them the best way they can be supported, because as always, our theme is choose health because you matter.
Yeah.
And that's mental and physical and everything in between. So I'll
Yeah.
jump to or go ahead, Kyle.
No, I will just note sort of the evolution, as I said, over the last decade. It was really in 2013 that we first covered what is now gender affirming surgery, and made the change to our brochure to start covering some services. We cover
Right.
much more now in 2014. And at that time, honestly, we did it quietly. We weren't trumpeting that we were one of the first to offer coverage, go beyond OPM requirements, which were for hormone replacement, or for hormone therapy, I should say, but to go beyond and cover surgical services. And we were
Right.
quiet about it. We wanted to make it available to those who needed it, but we weren't sort of trumpeting it. And here we are dedicating a month, including a podcast and a live broadcast, to the services we offer for this segment of our population. And I honestly couldn't be happier. And that we are out there, we are making these services proudly making these services available to our members. And we have a number of support programs. And I think that's where you were going with your next question.
Yeah,
So
I was.
I'm going to hush up.
No, you're fine. I was definitely going to ask about coverage when it comes to mental health. So what mental health services are covered that support gender identity exploration and affirmation?
Sure. So, we cover, I'll use my brochure language tone at first. We cover mental health services the same as we cover physical health services. So I should say mental or behavioral health under the broad umbrella. And that is essentially that we don't have any limits on the number of services. So it's not you only get 5 visits with a qualified therapist. We do, if you are receiving behavioral or mental health services, it does need to be someone who's qualified, typically a master's level counselor, or even a PhD or MD, so a psychologist or even a psychiatrist, depending on the services you're receiving. But there are a number of providers out there who specialize in this space, both for children and adults, and in some cases, as we talked about on the podcast, for parents and other family members of children and adolescents who are exploring their identity, because it can be something that parents may have trouble or need some time to grapple with, and may need some guidance. And so those services are covered as well. There's great tools out there to find providers who specialize in this area, and there's a number of groups out there that can help provide community support as well. But we do cover those mental health services. In network or overseas providers, 90% for professional services, so a counseling service. And if you're going out of network, we cover 70% of the plan allowance. All of that is after the calendar year deductible.
All right. And kind of on that same note, are there any in-network providers who specialize in LGBTQ plus health and gender affirming care, and where can people find that?
Sure, there are, and we don't at this time in our provider search tool have a specific way to filter for providers who sort of identify as specializing or particularly competent, culturally competent in this area. There are other groups out there, and I think we've got maybe a link to provide. This is from GLMA, which is Health Providers for, I'm going to get the name wrong.
Health Professionals Advancing LGBTQ plus Equality.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And so they have a provider search tool on there. That does not necessarily match up exactly with our in-network providers, but that might be a place to start if you're looking for someone in particular. I've spoken with members before, and not just mental health providers, but also when they're going to have an annual physical, a preventive check, anything like that, they're looking for someone who is competent. And GLMA, elsewhere on their website, has some great resources about 10 questions to ask your doctor if you identify as fill in the blank.
Right.
And just to make sure that there are special concerns for people in various parts of this community. whether they identify as lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual. There are specific questions that they have identified, and these are providers who identify as members of the community or as particular allies, and have put themselves forward to say, we are competent, we are ready to serve this community and the special needs that they have. And so they have put these lists together. So that is a good resource, a good place to start.
Absolutely. And next, I'll kind of jump to a little difficult of a question, but one I thought needed to be asked. How does our insurance companies support transgender and non-binary individuals who may face discrimination or challenges when accessing healthcare services outside of major metro areas?
And I'll add to that, even inside major metropolitan areas, right? It can occur anywhere. First of all, the first thing I will say is that you are enough, you matter, and we are here to support you. If that's identifying another provider, if it is identifying a provider who, in some cases, I'll encourage people to look at telemedicine and telehealth services. Because if you are in an area where there are not a lot of providers, maybe you're in a more rural area and you don't have access to a provider or don't feel comfortable going in person, you can, particularly for mental health, we see this, engage with the provider through telehealth, through our partners at Teladoc or vHealth if you're overseas, or through telemedicine. And telemedicine is going to be covered the same as an in-person visit, calendar year deductible and co-insurance. But I encourage you to look at those options. But the other thing is, if you do encounter discrimination of any kind, whether it's transgender, non-binary, even if it extends to based on race, anything like that, I encourage you to contact us and report a quality of service issue. We have a specific procedure inside to take that information and then to report it and to investigate it. And we may follow up for additional details. We do take those reports seriously, so we are here to support you. And again, can help identify other providers, including those. There is on our provider search tool, there is a way to filter for those who specialize in who offer telemedicine services. So you can look for that as well.
Great. And I know that's important and something that, people in other places that aren't big cities or may not be as accepting as other places, there's still help out there, and we will do our very best to get you the help that you need, mental, physical, whatever it may be. Right. And so I'll kind of jump to another question. Also about that same kind of topic, how does the Foreign Service Benefit Plan stay productive or stay proactive in adjusting its clinical policies and coverage details to reflect emerging research and recommendations from expert groups? Right.
And that is a mouthful. And right. I appreciate we talked about the questions ahead of time, because I wanted to put that out there because, we have, there's a couple ways that more than a couple ways that recommendations for changes come to us, and sometimes requirements for changes. So one is we do have, we are contracted through the Office of Personnel Management for the FEHB program. And we do have certain requirements that they put on all the plans every year, and they open up opportunities for us to cover things in different ways. So that is one way. If OPM says, you're going to cover this now, we're going to cover it. But there are also opportunities for us to go beyond the requirements. And I will say that at least in 2024, gender affirming surgery is one of those areas where we did go beyond the basic requirements. And in September, I believe it was, of 2022, WPATH, which is, I think they also, they're the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And they are sort of the recognized leading expert organization of medical professionals and others when it comes to transgender care. And they had not issued updated recommendations on standards of care since 2022, I believe it was. And so new recommendations came out in the fall of 2012. They last issued recommendations in 2012. 10 years later, here's an update. Too late for us to make major changes for 2023, but we started working on that right away for 2024. And different people will interpret their recommendations differently. Some will say, oh, there's not enough studies to include medical necessity for X service.
Right.
And I have the full recommendations printed out in a binder in my office and went through them, looked at the supporting studies and so forth. Not a medical professional, but I wanted, on behalf of our members, to be able to have an educated discussion with our clinical team and their recommendations. And we said it wasn't enough what they were how they interpreted it. And so we used the WPATH recommendations. We used what was coming from OPM. We used also recommendations and suggestions and requests from our members who have undergone gender affirming care and have found that they were looking for more coverage than we were offering at the time. And again, emerging standards, to back to the language of the question, indicated that it was time for us to update our coverage. And so we did so, including coverage for a number of new procedures in gender affirming care starting in 2024. And so we do stay up on this. We do rely on the medical expertise of our clinical team and our clinical partners at Aetna, but we don't take that just lock, stock, and barrel. We look at the unique needs of our population as well.
Right. And I think that's also important when it comes to, if you're a parent or you know someone who is looking for gender affirming care or just is having questions about their gender identity, that, Facebook or, other platforms may not be the best option to look when it comes to.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
To ask, or to seek factual information or like information on studies. Like it would be sites like WPATH or, talking to your doctor or, just looking at places that are usually founded by people of the LGBTQ plus community. That's where you want to ask questions. But I will say, not to hate on Facebook too much, Facebook is a great place for community groups. If you're looking for someone or looking for a group, like if you're a parent who has a child who is exploring their gender identity and seeing, what they're looking like, what type of person they're trying to become, or if they're becoming the person they want to be, it can be hard as a parent to understand everything. And groups like that are usually a great place to go. And I know we have some foreign service Facebook groups out there of communities where people talk just about foreign service or, if they're moving abroad, things like that. So there's a Facebook group for everything.
And I'll mention two organizations that I feel very comfortable pointing our listeners to, our viewers. One is PFLAG, and this is fairly well known. It has been around for decades. And this is, a great group for allies, family members of those who are identifying as members of the LGBTQ plus community, especially if it's something that's new to you or you're not sure how to handle. This is a great place to go. Online community, they have in many cases in-person community as well, but it's a great place to connect. And the other, Maddie, as you mentioned, there are some specific to the foreign affairs community, and one of those is GLIFA. And we had tried to get to meet up with GLIFA to do actually a podcast with them and what they do. We couldn't align schedules. They are an incredibly active organization, have been for decades, but their officers and folks are scattered around the world, and they are still working full-time in addition to doing the advocacy and support through the GLIFA organization. But I would point folks in that direction. And I'll just share one quick story, if I may, and I'm going to be as vague as possible to protect identities. But I one morning was in our office and got a call from a member overseas, and they were trying to figure out what to do for prior auth for their adult child who was seeking gender affirming surgery. It does require, I will note, prior authorization, whether the surgery is performed in the US or overseas. And they wanted to make sure all the pieces were in place before they went forward with the surgery. And they were doing this for their child. We had a great conversation. I put them in touch with our national team of excellence that focuses on gender affirming care. Followed up with them a few months later once the surgery was complete. Things had gone well. Now, this person was located in Asia, was part of one agency, and things seemed to be going well following that surgery. Not long after that follow-up conversation, I got a call from someone in, we'll just say Europe generally, and they were calling. Yeah, they were calling about coverage in general, and I mentioned a couple things like our national teams of excellence for infertility and gender affirming care, and they said, well, let me ask you a little bit more about that, because they had a teenager who was exploring their identity when it came to gender identity. And they said, I don't know how to support them. I don't know what this means at this time, and I'm working on it. And I said, hold on a second. And I was able, over the course of a couple of days, so more than a second, to connect them with permission on all sides with this other person who we worked for a different agency, was a continent, half a world away almost, who had been so supportive of their child throughout a journey, and were at a different place in their child's transition. But these people connected and formed their own support network. So I'll just say that the community is out there. You can access it through organizations like GLIFA. You can find it with a discerning eye through groups like Facebook and so forth. But the community is out there, and it's incredibly welcoming, incredibly supportive. And I just encourage you to seek that out. No matter where you are as part of this, the community, whether an ally or someone who's exploring your identity.
Absolutely. And, I do want to kind of ask some questions. You talked about prior authorization. So like, what steps can individuals take to ensure that their gender affirming treatments are covered by the Foreign Service Benefit Plan?
So I will say that when it comes to gender affirming surgery in particular, I'll lay hormone therapy aside for a moment, but when it comes to gender affirming surgery, as I mentioned before, it does require prior approval, which basically means you need to speak with one of our nurse care managers, be in touch with them. They're going to ask for some documentation and so forth prior to approval of the surgery. So make that call before you're thinking of surgery, whichever surgery, and the general terms being top, bottom, any kind of surgery or other procedure, and the procedures are listed in the brochure in terms of what we cover. Make that call, make sure that's in place so that you don't face a denial after the fact and you're out of pocket and so forth. They also, that National Team of Excellence, it's staffed by nurse care managers, also medical directors, typically with an MD. This is all they do. They work with they are not specific to Foreign Service Benefit Plan. They actually work with Aetna administered and Aetna plans across the country, but they are there to support our members. In some cases, particularly if you're in the U.S., they may be able to recommend in-network providers who specialize in this. But otherwise, they'll make sure the pieces are in place. They'll make sure that requirements have been met, that we've got the documentation so that coverage is in place. I will also note that when it comes to surgery, in most cases, surgery is not covered for people under the age of 18. There's a couple of exceptions there. I will refer you to the clinical team on that. But for the most part, surgery is not available until someone is considered a legal adult at age 18. When it comes to hormone therapy, that is different. And that's another place where I'd encourage communication with the National Team of Excellence and the nurse care managers there, because they can advise you on what steps need to be taken, how to obtain that. It is covered under the pharmacy benefit, but our pharmacy benefit manager, Express Scripts, and our medical partners at Aetna communicate daily. And so when you've got that piece in place, they can have that. So whether it's someone starting at a younger age with hormone blockers, or it's someone starting later with hormone therapy, they can advise that. There's also support services in place from both Aetna and Express Scripts as people are starting or maybe changing or adjusting their therapies, if they're experiencing unexpected side effects or just side effects and not sure how to deal with that. You can call and get support from clinical experts who again, this is what they focus on and will be there to support you. So the best thing I can say is call that prior approval line, which is 1-800-593-2354 to get started. That will take you to our line, and they may transfer you to a National Team of Excellence or assign you to a case manager who, again, focuses on that. So that is the best recommendation I have to get started there.
All right, perfect. And our next question will be we've talked a little bit about how our providers might be trained in specialized with the LGBTQ plus community, but are there any trainings in place does the Foreign Service Benefit train its customer service and claims personnel to handle inquiries related to LGBTQ plus health needs sensitively?
Yeah, so this is something that always is evolving, and we do have training for our members. We do our best so that our health benefits officers and others you may speak to on the phone address all of our members, all of our callers with respect and as they might wish to be addressed. We're not perfect. I will say that first, and so we may fail at times. But we are working toward an environment where we go through training as well as FSBP specific, as well as some that comes from Aetna with their larger resources in this area, and are working toward always using phrases like spouse instead of immediately assuming that if someone who's in our system as male is calling and talks about their spouse that they're specifically talking about a woman. Trying to use gender neutral terms like spouse, child instead of son or daughter, etc., to make sure that we're doing that. Again, we're not perfect. We're going to continue to make strides in that area, and that's part of ongoing training.
Absolutely, and I think relaying that we aren't perfect, no one's perfect, obviously, and that we're doing the best that we can, and we're trying to improve daily. And I hope people know that and see that we are trying. And I think our next question will be what you kind of touched on, connecting two people who had asked similar questions and could be of help to each other. But what privacy protections are in place to ensure confidentiality for transgender and non-binary?
Good follow-up. Yes. And I should be clear. I want to reiterate on that situation. That was sort of a one-off, but it just happened that I'd spoken to these people within a week of each other, and it just sounded like they were just so well matched to both wanted to do all they could to support their children who are on this journey, and felt like they could support each other at the same time. So I did get permission. Can I ask this person if they're willing to contact you? No details. Can I put you in touch with this person? No details. So I got a yes, and then I made the connection. So at their preferred, in their preferred method, at their preferred, as it turned out, email addresses. So putting that aside. That said, privacy, of course, in this space is in the healthcare space is paramount. Members' information is protected, whether that's their personal identifiable information, but particularly their personal protected health information, their PHI, when it comes to diagnoses, procedure codes, and more, is protected by HIPAA, by the update to HIPAA known as the High Tech Act. We also have additional protections that stem from that are in place, including certain things like when I get reporting, and our leadership team at AFSPA, we get reporting from Aetna about high costs, what we call high cost claimants. So those who have complex conditions where additional services are going. One of the things we get on that report is certain things are excluded from any reporting, and this isn't specific to gender affirming care, but cases involving HIV and other pieces are excluded from any reporting in that way. We get just aggregate results there. But I will just say that HIPAA protections are in place, including protections from a spouse being able to gain information unless they're listed. We sometimes run into this, and it's a hassle. You call and you want to get a claims update on a spouse or a child's, an older child's claim, and you can't. And that is for a very good reason. It is frustrating. I understand. We do offer a HIPAA 3 form, which is an authorization form. It does have to be renewed every year because guess what? Our preferences can change in terms of who we want to have access to our information. So that is out there, but generally there's very little that we can share without the actual patient's information once the patient is, I believe it's age 14, and certainly once they're an adult. So we can maybe say, yes, a claim from this date has been paid, but we can't tell you anything more than that. So those protections are in place. Our staff doesn't have access to those. We observe and regularly check on what's known as the minimum necessary rule. So we are not accessing more information than we need to answer a specific question. So if somebody says, hey, was the claim from, Dr. Longton on this date? I'm not a doctor. Dr. Longton on June 27th played. The only thing we could say is we would look at is yes. We wouldn't say, yes, the claim for going to the doctor for your immunization was paid. It would just be, yes, it's been processed, and that's it. So I want to assure people of that, that those protections are in place.
Right. And don't you worry, the entirety of AFSPA does the training every year about HIPAA, and we just did it recently, so we are up to date. And unfortunately, Kyle, it's time for AFSPA Live to end. But don't fear, everyone. We will be back in exactly a month on July 25th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time to discuss our next topic of AFSPA Live. And in the meantime, be on the lookout for a couple of new podcast episodes we have planned. And those will be out in July. And, you know, as we are wrapping up the week, celebrate the last couple of days of Pride. It's also Men's Health Month. Men, please go get your daily or yearly physical.
Yes.
If you're above the age of, is it 45 for colon screenings?
You're thinking of a 45 for colorectal cancer screenings, for colonoscopy every 10 years. Those are covered 100% for preventive. If your doctor says, let's do it again next year for diagnosis or treatment, that would be covered as an in-network. I will also note that men of a certain age, up to age 69, so everyone, I believe age 40, get your PSA tests.
Yep.
And just go and get your biometric screening. You can get $75 for completing the biometric screening, but you may find something, as I did a few years ago, that some of your numbers are off. And then you need to get some things checked out. Do it early.
Yep.
Make sure those pieces are in place. And, you know, don't wait. I'm going to say this, and I said it in the email message that many of you may have received. Men, we are not very good about this. We are outpaced by women at every mental health, physical health, cancer screenings, early treatment, all of it. And we need to change that. And so I want to encourage you all. Nobody's going to know. If you want to talk to somebody about any kind of mental health challenges you might be having, even if it's just stress or something, nobody's going to know.
Nope.
Those protections apply to you. If you go see a doctor and they say you need to take a cholesterol medication, nobody's going to know that either.
Yep.
Get it.
Exactly. It can only help you in the long run.
That's right. That's right. And we are here to help you. So if you have questions, we have the dedicated clinical team where we can put the number back up there. That is our general clinical team number. You can call them if you've got questions about a diagnosis on anything. Not that one.
Not that one.
That's a good one to call if you got questions about benefits. But that one right there for gender affirming care, but also anything that is sort of our general number, can take you in other directions. But anything you have, they can answer those questions. We've got resources on our website. It's being shared in the chat by our colleagues. But please do not wait.
Exactly.
And do not hesitate to take action. If you're thinking you might need to see a specialist, make the appointment today, because this is nationwide. It takes a long time to see a specialist. I had a call recently, 8 months.
Yeah.
8 months to get in to see a specialist.
8 months can make a big difference when it's something scary or terrible like cancer, you know?
Or just weighing on your mind if your doctor's saying, I think maybe you should see a specialist about this, but it's not at a critical point. So the specialist's like, oh, we'll see you later.
Right.
It's going to weigh on your mind. So make that appointment. Don't hesitate to call somebody. Keep that appointment.
Right.
Then call another specialist to see if you can get in sooner. Worked for me recently. 1 month versus 8 months. So I don't have any more luck left for that.
Yeah.
So
your luck's out.
But I encourage you that. The other thing, not totally unrelated, I just want to mention that through the end of July, we also have an open enrollment period on our critical illness insurance.
Right.
And so this is a great time that you can sign up. It provides a one-time payout should you be diagnosed with any of the covered major conditions. And major, we're talking about cancer, organ failure, stroke, heart attack, severe coronary artery disease, renal failure. I think I may be missing one in there, but check that out. It's available on our website. You'll see things on our social media channels as well, but please check that out. This is a great additional protection that's available to folks. It's not disability insurance. We've got that too. It's not life insurance. We've got that too. But it is something that as we've seen in the last month, a lot of people have been interested in. So please take a look at that. But in the meantime, Maddie, As you said, happy Pride.
Yep.
Happy Men's Health Month.
Woo.
Make an appointment with your doctor. Anybody, get that preventive exam.
Exactly.
Earn some incentives.
Make some money.
That's right. Save yourself some money. And in the meantime, continue to choose health. You do matter. You matter to us. You matter to so many people in your life. And stay well until we see you on July 25th.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Watching our broadcast. Join us again the last Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, don't forget to look for AFSPA Cares on all of our social media channels: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook,